So great to see you all. We had an incredible offseason, off to a great start, but we all know this is just the jumping off point. And, we accomplished a lot in these last 3 months, but, we got to keep that momentum going into camp. And we got less than 30 practices or so until our first game. So we have time, but no time to waste. So I'll open it up to questions.
Forget about that he's one of the best players on the planet. Just personality and leadership, how fortunate do you feel that you have Justin Jefferson kind of showing you the way here?
Extremely fortunate to just have him in the locker room and be on our team because he really is a true team player. He sacrifices every single day to be out here with us and work his butt off every single practice. And, that just rubs off on everyone, especially when your best player is, giving it his all. So nobody has any excuse to do anything less. And, he's just authentically him every single day. And it's a really special human being and even, pretty special athlete as well. So
what has it been like, I guess, just building off that, building the rapport off field, like going to Timberwolves games and stuff, getting to spend that time with him outside the building?
It's been fantastic, just like I said, the authenticity of him. He's not too big or too cool for school. Like, he's Jets, and he's, just a guy's guy. And we appreciate every single moment we have with him, me specifically. And, we're going to keep stacking those days, this offseason for sure.
JJ, where do you think that you've grown the most from when you got here last year, just as a pure thrower of the football, to where you are right now?
Pure thrower of the football, I believe I've grown the most on just the different level of trajectories of throws. At Michigan, I was kind of a one-speed pitch kind of guy, had a couple deeper balls with level 3 throws and stuff like that, but just working on that 2-ball and, different paces to the pitches and, ball location and all that, because at the end of the day, we want as much yak and rack as possible. So,
do you go back, and there were scouting reports from credible sources that you didn't have arm strength or it was okay. Do you know where that started? Or how surprised were you? Because in watching you for 5 practices, there might be some things I see, but it ain't arm strength.
That's a great question, Judd. I would say, a lot of it just comes with the stigma of playing at Michigan and, not throwing the ball a lot. But at the same time, it could be my frame and, they don't see a 6'5", 240 guy. So how can he throw at 61 miles an hour at the combine and all that? But at the end of the day, it's going to show up and, the people that know. And, I think it's just, the situations I've been in and maybe, not passing the eye test for some people.
Is touch the biggest thing? It looks like your touch is fine, but it's not, as good as the arm strength is. Is that the biggest thing to work on? The touch on deep balls or the touch on trying to get a ball over a guy?
I would say so for me personally, yes. Yeah, that's a great evaluation. It just comes with, the reps on reps in the field, just like you're working on your chips in a golf game. And, just finding that feel over and over again and having this much time off and not throwing the ball since the injury, I just finding that feel again. And, it's just an ultimate blessing that I get to get out here and, take advantage of these 6 weeks off and really work on those different kind of pitches.
Is there a learning moment from the spring that stands out as a singular one above the rest?
That's a great question, Dane, but I feel like there's not one singular moment. It's just been, different events through each day. So many different things show up when you play Flo's defense, and especially, with our offense and all the different varieties that we can use with formations, motions, and concepts. I feel like, just every day there's always something new to learn, and, to pick out one point would be, doing this learning process a disservice.
So the touch, Jets was talking about when you guys have a chance to let it rip in practice, that he specifically loved how you could just kind of get it in there in a tight window. That's really what's going to happen during a game. When you have those moments where KO lets you open it up and you can find kind of the sweet spots, how much have you learned from that with Justin?
It's really fascinating to watch him catch, some of those fastballs because it just sticks right to his hands. And, all of them, like Jordan, Speedy, TJ, J.O., even Aaron and Jordan. It's really fascinating to just, those tight windows. Usually, you want to throw with more anticipation and, have that yeah, I'd say anticipation is the word, but, having guys where you could just rip it and to know that they're going to catch it and make a move and, do something with it is truly special.
How much in this spring this year and maybe even last year are you just kind of experimenting or testing out to see, like, what's the best way to do this, and maybe this isn't the best way, but I want to see it first, and not necessarily focusing on the outcome per se? How much do you do that in these sessions?
Every single day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to experiment as much as possible because this is the time to do it. This is the time to try things. This is the time to, talk through different reads with KO. And, it's a blessing to be able to have that coaching staff behind me that supports me and encourages that. And, that's the quickest way you're going to learn, the quickest way you're going to grow. So, yeah, I've been doing that pretty much every day.
So do you come out of here with a lot more answers than you had coming in, or is it still a process even in training camp where you do the same thing?
It's still going to be the same process, maybe just with the pads on and the competitive periods that, winning the period is going to mean that much more. But especially during this learning and teaching phase, it's just kind of all about feel and, growing through failure and, learning from it.
JJ, what did you think of just the extent of like plays, verbiage that they kind of threw at you through this process?
I wish I could show you guys a call sheet. That's a great question, Alec. It's been awesome because they've really, pushed the limits on just, what I can handle. And, that's what I asked for. I'd rather sweat in training and, limit the bleeding on the battlefield when we get there. But, they've just been doing a tremendous job of preparing us and making sure that we find comfort in the uncomfortable positions that we're inevitably going to be in.
You talked a little bit. How much of a sense have you been able to get of what playing against Flo's defense is going to do in training camp to help you as you get ready to face NFL defenses?
Just the multitude of looks that you get to see. Most defenses you go against, they only have, 5 to 6 calls that they really rely on. Flo's changing things up all the time, and within those different calls he has different variants of how they get there, different cover 2 looks, and the backside safety playing the middle run through, or it's the nickel this time, and there's just so many different levels that you get exposed to, so it's been huge.
JJ, you talked a little bit, I think, last year about some changes in your footwork, just kind of adapting to the way they wanted to coach you through it. Now that you're a year into that process, where are you feeling like you're at with that footwork that they want to kind of be in second nature?
Footwork, I feel like it's improved tremendously since last year, but there's still, fine-tuning things that we got to, address and work on, especially this, upcoming 5.5 weeks. It's going to be huge, and just, smoothing things out and making it be as natural as possible in the timing with each concept, each route. So there's still work to always improve on, but, night and day from last year for sure.
What are you most looking forward to about the next 5 weeks, spending your time?
The thing I'm looking most forward to is just, being able to study, like, rejuvenate my body, have a baby shower coming up, so doing that. But really just, take advantage of this time with the guys and just get as many reps as I can with Justin, Jordan, TJ, all the guys, and just make sure that, we hit this ground running when we get back here in July 20th. That's when the QBs report, but we get it back for fall camp for sure.
Will you stay here, or will you go find those guys and throw with them wherever they're going to be?
I'll stay here, but if I have to go find them, I will, for sure.
We haven't really asked you much about the knee, and I don't know if you felt like you needed to test it out for a final last confirmation that things were good to go, or did you need to do that, and did you have any feelings at all about it during the course of the spring here?
So no, I've never felt it at all. It feels honestly stronger than ever, and fully cleared in the physicals last time. So last Monday, and so we're good to go.
You were cleared on Monday?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
JJ, what do you feel like you learned about yourself this spring, either on the field or just as a leader?
The thing I learned about myself is, just the weight that I hold every single day, and just showing up, being the same guy every single day, bringing that attitude, effort, and energy. It infects, the whole group, and it's just so amazing to see, Ryan Kelly, Blake Brandel, Brian O'Neill, all these guys step up and, be this one cohesive unit. And, it just really makes me truly excited, just to get back here, fall camp again. But, it's just the biggest thing I learned is that, the things that I can control mean so much more than, you know, I ever even thought. And it's just awesome doing it with a great group of guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a good one.